Good evening, members of the Executive, fellow councillors and officers. May I welcome you to this meeting of the Waverley Executive, and may I also welcome our councillors sitting to the rear this evening, Councillor Band, Councillor Seaborn, Councillor Gray, and extend a warm welcome to the newly elected councillor for Farnham Castle Ward, Councillor Beeman. So without further ado, I will move on to item 1 on the agenda, just caveating that with the fact that should we have a fire alarm tonight, which we are not expecting, it will be the real thing. Please exit via the nearest fire exit, either to your rear there or here to my right, and we gather outside Waitrose where a register will be taken, and you can then, once safely accounted for, obviously leave and go home. So if we move to item 1, which is the minutes, and that's to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 10th of April 2018. If you're all in agreement with those, I will sign them at the end of this meeting. Can I ask if you're agreed? Thank you. Moving to item 2, apologies for absence. Fiona.
Thank you, Leader. No apologies. I understand that Councillor Edwards is running a little late, but hopefully he'll be able to join us.
Thank you. Yes, I understand he's in traffic on his way back from business today, and so he will join us at the appropriate time. Can I move to item 3, declarations of interest? Councillor Denis.
Thank you, Leader. I don't have a disclosable pecuniary interest in agenda item 7. But I do feel that my level of involvement in the local football club is sufficient that in addition to declaring a non-pecuniary interest, I should withdraw from the chamber whilst it's being discussed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Denis. Colleagues, any other interests you need to disclose at this point? No? Thank you. Any questions from members of the public?
None, Leader.
Thank you very much. So we move to item 5, the first of a number that will be led by the Deputy Leader and Finance Portfolio Holder, and that is the Financial Outturn Report for 2017-18. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Leader. The Financial Outturn Report shows a surplus on the General Fund of £246,000. The summary is detailed in Appendix 1. On the capital side, after rescheduling is taken into account, the general account shows an underspend of around about £456,000. For the housing revenue account, the revenue is again in surplus to the tune of around about 1.5 million, and on the capital side, there is an underspend of around 3 million. The Council is at this stage of the year managing its finances very well, although we remain vigilant for any deviations from our service budgets. There are 5 recommendations before you.
Councillor Hall, thank you very much. Colleagues, executive colleagues, any questions, any points you'd like to raise or make at this point? No? In that case, we have 5 recommendations before us on page 3 of your agenda. Can I ask, are those agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Moving to item 6, which is the Boom Credit Union and the report on pages 25 to 28. And again, I'll defer to Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Leader. This item is to approve a £15,000 grant for Waverley to purchase deferred shares in the Boom Credit Union. Boom is a not-for-profit credit union which provides affordable loans, savings accounts and prepaid cards to its members. Boom gives residents the ability to source finance at a fair price without having to resort to so-called payday loans, which often charge sky-high rates of interest. Additionally, the credit union promotes saving and good money management and are properly regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority and the Prudential Regulation Authority. There is one recommendation for this item.
Colleagues, any items? Councillor Denis, followed by Councillor Mrs King.
Thank you, Leader. A very, very quick point. I think any scheme that avoid payday loans, you know, we've seen them on TV and some of the figures that they quote, you know, up to 1,000% interest. So that alone, I think, shows this is a really prudent way of trying to help our residents. So it gets my support.
Thank you, Councillor Denis. Councillor Mrs King.
Thank you very much, Leader. I entirely agree with Councillor Denis on my left. I'm a big supporter of the Boom, and we've promoted them, I have to say, to our tenants through our housing magazine, and I'm really pleased to see that quite a number of residents actually took up loans and saving plans with them, so I strongly support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor King. I myself sat on the board of the predecessor to the Boom Credit Union, which was Surrey Save, and I think it's really important to recognise, as Councillor Denis has stated, the importance of the credit union, and especially within Surrey. And I know that Councillor Band also sat on the Surrey Save Credit Union board for several years, so also has experience, and the importance to our residents cannot be underestimated. In Waverley, we have a number of residents who, for varying reasons, are susceptible to loan sharks and to the various companies out there in the marketplace who offer these payday loans and such like. And it really can be, unfortunately, for them a real slippery slope if they become entangled with them. So it's really important that we do all we can to help to support Boom. It is a recognised credit union, recognised by the Financial Services Authority, so that's really important. And what we've seen through the work that the housing team have done here at Waverley and our comms team have been doing with Boom and its predecessor, Surrey Save, is a lot more recognition of that service, a lot better interaction and use of the service. And as I say, it's very important, I feel, and I know my colleagues on the executive and wider council feel it important that we really do help to support this credit union, and that we really use that, and it will be supporting our residents here in Waverley. That is absolutely crucial. They provide an excellent service, and we want that very much to continue. So I'm really supportive, and I know I speak for the rest of the executive. We've discussed it at our various briefing meetings, and I'd like to thank the officers also here tonight, Mr Vickers and Mr Clark especially, and Mr Bainbridge and his legal team for the work that they've done in helping us to really move this proposal forward. Colleagues, can I ask, are you content that we agree this recommendation under item 6? Agreed. Thank you. So we now move to agenda item 7. I'll just let Councillor Denis leave the chamber, and Councillor Hall, you'd like to take that item.
Thank you once again, Leader. Allfold Football Club is a great example of a community sports club. It's run by the community, for the community. Due to the hard work and determination of its members, they've achieved many successes, including winning the Surrey County Cup, the West Sussex Premier League and the Chichester Charity Cup. This item is to approve £20,000 for Allfold Football Club in order that they can continue to grow as a focal point of the community and go on to achieve even greater successes. Waverley is committed to supporting the development of community sport, and I'm sure you will all join me in wishing Allfold the best of luck in the coming season. I urge you all to support the item.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hall. Colleagues, any comments on that item? Can I ask, is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Moving therefore to item 8, where I know we have 2 speakers for the item on capital expenditure process and the management review. Can I ask Councillor Band, please, to speak?
Thank you, Leader, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. The background to the ONS committee setting up a scrutiny panel to look at capital expenditure and the slippage stems from the results of the past years, and in particular the 2016-17 year, where although they're not summarised actually in the report, the figures members of the executive may be interested to recall are the general fund at the end of the year had sanctioned a capital expenditure of 9.2 million, of which in the final end of year results 4.8 was slipped. Of that 4.8, 2.7 only became reported after March. In the housing revenue account, the total approved capital expenditure for that year was 18.3 million, of which 9.1 million was slipped. Again, at 3.8 of that 9.1 was only notified after March. So, from our perspective, there were some serious issues worthy of investigation, and hence the report. What we did, and actually all 3 active members of that subcommittee are here this evening, was to review typical general fund projects and typical HRA projects, and as set out in the report, and coming to 19 specific recommendations. They cover 3 key areas. The first is the preparation of the budget and the selection of projects to be included in the budget. And what we discovered, and as the report indicates, that the lack of consistency in the methodology of getting projects into a budget, the lack of separate and independent scrutiny of those projects coming forward. And then moving on to project execution, we see similar things happening. A lack of consistency across the organisation, not just between the General Fund and the HRA, but even within individual departments of the General Fund, of the documentation and the methodology of managing those individual projects. And overarching all of this comes, I think, which is perhaps the most important issue, is the lack of resource planning and management. I don't think we saw on any single occasion the detailed presentation of a project to be included in the capital expenditure budget, which had a time-based resource plan attached to it. And we never saw a system where the resources across the impact of resources across a particular department were laid bare for examination. And a similar thing happens in project execution, and I rather suspect my colleague Councillor Seaborn will wish to say more on this topic. But I think it is a particularly crucial issue worthy of really very serious consideration. So we have the 19 recommendations. They cover the detail of our findings. That the work we did would not have been possible without the fantastic cooperation of our officers. They really opened up to us. And I commend those recommendations to the executive. And I think the Value for Money ONS would welcome the review downstream of the implementation activities if the executive is minded to adopt these recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Councillor Band, thank you very much. An excellent report. Clearly a lot of really good and detailed work done by all of you on that committee. So thank you very much for that summary, which is really helpful. Councillor Seaborn, would you like to speak? Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Councillor Band has very eloquently set out the background to the project, so I'm not going to duplicate most of what he said. I would like to start just by acknowledging the huge amount of work and energy and thoroughness of my colleagues on this exercise. It really was carried out in a very efficient and diligent manner. I'd reiterate the excellent openness and cooperation that we got from officers involved who presented large amounts of evidence to us to review, and I think they were really genuinely very open, and that enabled us to get some good results. And then the report itself shows the experience of my two colleagues on this, in that no sooner had we completed the technical work and that they both disappeared off to Southeast Asia on cruises, leaving me to work with Democratic Services and get a report out. And any credit for the quality of the report must go entirely to Democratic Services, and I will willingly take the blame for any flaws in it. The meat of what I want to say is emphasising the importance of recommendations 8 and 9, which talk to the resourcing aspect. I think they're self-explanatory, so they don't need any more explanation. The reason that I feel this is so important is that we do have very high staff turnover at the moment in Waverley, and anything we can do that reduces the pressure on the high calibre people managing our projects, who are the engine room of the organisation, has got to be beneficial. So I feel very strongly that implementation of the recommendations 8 and 9 can help reduce that pressure, which not only will help with our resourcing aspects, but of course it will lead to a better chance of good outcomes in our projects. Thank you, Leader.
Councillor Seaborn, thank you very much. Councillor Hall, did you want to speak at all?
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to personally thank those members and officers who've put together this excellent report. I think I emailed out at the time. It's very rare to actually get a report that hits the nail completely on the head, but I think this one does. It examines the delivery element of our activities, which is by far one of the most important. It goes through the project initiation, the budget management of a project, the project management, monitoring, and the phasing. All nuts and bolts to people who are project managers, but something that we definitely need to do. I'm happy to fully endorse all the recommendations in this report, and if approved, we will be taking steps as soon as practically possible to implement them. I urge everyone to support the recommendation, and again, I would like to thank those members that put in so much work to put together such an excellent piece of work. Thank you.
Colleagues, is there anything anyone wishes to add? No? I think just to sum up really, and as Councillor Hall has said, this is a really excellent report. It really does make very clear and really give us some real key work streams, but also some real points of focus, which is what we need to really now move this forward, especially in terms of certainly recommendations 8 and 9. Altogether, there are 18 recommendations here, which we can work, and the majority of which we can start to implement very quickly. I've been already discussing this with Councillor Hall and Mr Clark and Mr Horwood today. Given the amount of activity that we are going to start to see and have already started over the last few weeks at Waverley, it is really important that we are really focused and we are properly resourced for delivering our projects, and that we have the right level of resource and skills to deliver those projects, because as I say, there's a lot of activity happening at the moment, but also more, quite a lot more, and some very significant activity in the pipeline. In addition to saying a big thank you to all involved from the actual scrutiny committee, and I know not everyone's able to be here tonight for that. My thanks also to the officers involved, and also especially to Yasmin Makim, who I know worked really, really closely with the councillors and her fellow officers. She's one of our graduate trainees, and she's done an absolutely superb job on this. She really has, and I know some of the councillors involved have spoken to me and just asked me to really recognise that. So I would like to recognise that tonight and thank her, because she really has gone above and beyond in the work she's put into this. And as I say, it's an excellent piece of work. It gives us a really good framework and a really good focus as well, which is exactly what is needed to make sure that we do deliver our projects and we deliver them successfully. So my thanks again, and moving back to the item on the agenda, we have one recommendation. Can I ask colleagues, is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Moving to Treasury Management Activity 2017-18, Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Leader. This is a report to note which covers our money market deposits. Executive members will note over 90% of our deposits are less than a year in time, and all deposits are rated A or above. So we seem to be getting decent returns while retaining good credit and short maturities. This is just an item to note.
Any comments, colleagues? Can I take the recommendation? There's one recommendation to that item. Is that agreed? Agreed. Moving to item 10, so this is not an item by Councillor Hall. Item 10 is the appointment to employers' negotiating team for 2018-2019. So on an annual basis, colleagues, we appoint the members of the employees' negotiating team, and basically that role is to work with the Chief Executive and the Senior Directorate team to negotiate and conduct any negotiations with staff through the Joint Negotiating Committee in terms of looking at pay and conditions. And this year, the employers' negotiating team will comprise of the 6 councillors, as usual, and the membership that is proposed for the forthcoming year is as follows. To be noted below, myself and the Deputy Leader, Councillor Denis, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Goodridge and Councillor Isherwood. Colleagues, there is one recommendation to that item, and that is that that appointments panel be agreed. Agreed. Thank you. We have one item to be heard in exempt. So if I can now move to the agreement of the executive that we exclude press and public. Is that item agreed? Right. So we will now, in pursuant to